The rain isn't just falling. It's auditioning for a disaster movie. I'm in my living room, a lukewarm cup of coffee in hand, watching the deluge try to beat its way through the double-glazed windows. Sarah, my wife, is doing that thing where she peers through the blinds like she's expecting to see sharks swimming down Acacia Drive. "Dave, the street. It's really starting to pool," she says, her voice tight. "Worse than last year." I take a sip of coffee. It tastes like impending doom, or maybe just yesterday's grounds. "Yeah, I see it. But that old floodgate at the end of Acacia should be handling it. Old man Hemlock, bless his cantankerous soul, knew what he was doing when he put that thing in, years before this HOA even dreamed of existing." I wander over to the window, my own unease starting to bubble. The water is definitely higher than I've ever seen it, already swallowing the curbs and creeping up the manicured lawns with an unnerving speed. It's turning our pleasant suburban street into a murky, fast-moving canal. Then I see her. A squat figure in a canary yellow raincoat, the kind of yellow that screams hazard or banana-themed superhero, wrestling with the rusty mechanism of the floodgate down at the end of the cul-de-sac. It's Brenda, our HOA president, self-appointed queen of all she surveys, which unfortunately includes my front yard. "No," I whisper, the coffee cup halfway to my lips. "She wouldn't. Tell me she's not closing that floodgate." Sarah joins me, her hand instinctively gripping my arm. "Closing it? Why would she close it? In this?" Why? Because Brenda operated on a level of petty malice that defied logic. If there was a rule she could misinterpret to make someone's life miserable, she'd find it, laminate it, and then beat you over the head with it. And that floodgate, a relic from a saner time, had always been a particular thorn in her meticulously landscaped side. I don't even bother with a decent jacket, just my old college hoodie. The wind whips the rain into my face, stinging my eyes as I dash out the front door. The water is already over my sneakers, cold and surprisingly swift. "Brenda!" I yell, my voice barely carrying over the roar of the storm. "What in God's name are you doing? That gate needs to be open!" She turns, a smug little smile plastered on her face, rain dripping from the brim of her ridiculous yellow hood. "David, funny seeing you out in this weather." She actually sounds pleased with herself. "I'm merely securing unapproved community alterations. Section 4, subsection B, regarding non-sanctioned drainage modifications. If you'd care to check your HOA handbook, page 37. She pats a brand new, heavy-duty padlock she's just snapped onto the floodgate's ancient lever mechanism. This eyesore has been on the docket for removal for months. My jaw drops. Eyesore? It's a floodgate, Brenda. It's literally the only thing preventing our houses from becoming houseboats right now. Look at the water. It's swirling around our ankles, already carrying leaves and debris past us. Brenda, however, remains unmoved, a small, water-resistant monument to bureaucratic insanity. The bylaws are very specific, David. Perhaps if residents maintained their drainage swales properly, as per Guideline 12C, Appendix A, this wouldn't be such an issue. Consider this a proactive measure to encourage compliance. She actually winks, a slow, deliberate blink of her rain-lashed eye. Proactive? Right. Like a proactive appendectomy with a rusty spoon, my blood pressure was doing the Macarena. This woman wasn't just power-tripping. She was on a full-blown Napoleonic campaign against common sense, and my basement was about to become her Waterloo. I splash back inside, soaked and fuming. Sarah's already rolling up the expensive rug in the hallway. She locked it? With a padlock? Is she completely insane? Clinically, I'm starting to think so, I say, water dripping from my hair onto the already damp doormat. I tried the manual crank before I came back in. It won't budge with that monster lock she put on. And that gate, it's heavy as sin even when it's working. My first call is to Public Works. I get a weary-sounding guy named Bill, who sounds like he's said the same thing 100 times today. Sir, Acacia Drive is a private road, HOA jurisdiction. We can't intervene unless it directly threatens city infrastructure downstream or causes an undeniable public safety emergency. Bill, I plead. My prize-winning azaleas are about to become a public safety emergency. They're drowning. My entire street is about to drown. I understand your frustration, sir, Bill drones, but our hands are tied. Have you tried reasoning with your HOA? I almost laugh. Reasoning with Brenda? You'd have better luck reasoning with a hungry badger? I try a few neighbors. Old Mr. Grumbles down the street, who's had more run-ins with Brenda than a stuntman has with broken bones, actually cackles. Saw her out there this morning, son, giggling with that padlock. Said it was to stop the riff-raff from the next county using our creek access for their nefarious picnicking. The woman's a menace, a genuine 24-karat menace. Just as I hang up, red and blue lights flash through the rain-streaked windows. Brenda, true to form, has already called the cops on me. Probably for aggressive posturing or excessive eyebrow furrowing. Officers Miller, older, with a face that's seen too many domestic disputes, and Peterson, younger, looking like he just graduated from the academy yesterday and is already regretting his career choice, arrive. Their patrol SUV sends up a bow wave as it navigates our increasingly aquatic street. Brenda, dripping but triumphant, meets them at the curb, or what used to be the curb. Officers, thank heavens! This man, David Fletcher, was threatening me and attempting to vandalize HOA property. She points a dramatic, accusing finger at my front door. I step out onto the porch. Vandalize? I was trying to stop our homes from flooding because she locked the only floodgate on the street during a flash flood watch. I gesture wildly at the rising water, which is now lapping at the edge of my driveway. Officer Miller lets out a sigh that seems to carry the weight of the entire storm. Rain runs in rivulets off his hat. Folks, let's just try to calm down. Ma'am, did you lock that gate? I secured HOA assets, officer, Brenda says, drawing herself up to her full, unimpressive height. As is my fiduciary duty to the homeowners of this esteemed community. Officer Peterson, whose trousers just got a fresh soaking from a passing piece of driftwood that was probably someone's prize-winning gnome 5 minutes ago, says nervously, There's, a lot of water, ma'am. A real lot. Look, Mr. Fletcher, Officer Miller says, his gaze flicking from the clearly rising water to the stubbornly locked floodgate, then back to me. I get your concern. I really do. But if it's HOA property and she's the president, technically this is a civil matter. We can't order her to open it unless it becomes an immediate, life-threatening hazard or blocks public thoroughfares. My living room is about to become a public thoroughfare for catfish and wayward garden gnomes, I exclaim, my voice rising in desperation. Isn't that a hazard? Brenda actually smirks. It's a small, tight, infuriating little twist of her lips. The officers, looking profoundly unhappy, but legally constrained, give me a warning about not damaging HOA property, and then, with apologies and backward glances at the encroaching water, they leave. Civil matter. My foot. My civil right to not have my living room become a swamp was being actively, joyfully violated. Miller was trying to be reasonable, by the book, but reasonable wasn't going to save my widescreen TV, was it? The water was now officially over the curb and making a determined break for my prize-winning azaleas. Brenda was going to drown us all in a sea of bylaws and smugness, and the law, apparently, was on her side. The scene in the garage is one of controlled panic. Sarah and I are frantically moving boxes of old tax returns, sentimental Christmas decorations, and things we probably should have thrown out years ago to the higher shelves. Water, cold and silty, is seeping under the garage door, forming an ominous, spreading puddle. My kid's inflatable pool raft, a faded blue dolphin, bobs mockingly in the miniature lagoon developing near the lawnmower. "This is a disaster, Dave. An absolute disaster." Sarah's voice is strained. "What are we going to do? Can we try to break that lock? Maybe a sledgehammer?" I shake my head, wiping rain and sweat from my forehead. "It's a serious bit of hardware she's put on there. Industrial grade. I'd need a cutting torch. And by the time I got one and figured out how to use it without setting the whole street on fire, we'd be snorkeling in the family room." My eyes drift around the cluttered garage, searching for something. Inspiration. A miracle. They land on a faded Polaroid tacked to the dusty workbench. Me and my buddy, Mike, years ago, grinning like idiots, standing next to something large, gray, and distinctly boat-shaped at a government surplus auction. It had seemed like a hilarious, if slightly impractical, purchase at the time. I start muttering to myself, the words barely audible over the drumming rain. Navigable waterway. Hazard to navigation. Duty to assist. "What are you mumbling about now, Dave?" Sarah asks, heaving a box labeled irreplaceable baby photos onto a precarious stack. "Are you going into shock?" A slow, dangerous, and possibly unhinged grin spreads across my face. "Honey," I say, turning to her with a glint in my eye she hasn't seen since I suggested we elope to Vegas. "How do you feel about large-scale marine intervention?" She just stares at me, the box of photos clutched to her chest. Marine intervention. Dave, we live in Ohio. I'm already reaching for my phone, dialing Mike. He's a character, my oldest friend, owns a rambling, slightly dilapidated farm out past the county line, collects projects the way other people collect stamps. His projects just tend to be bigger and louder and occasionally explosive. "Mikey!" I shout into the phone over the storm's soundtrack. "You still got that, Harbor Patrol conversation starter we picked up from the GSA auction a few years back? The big gray one?" I can hear chickens clucking furiously on his end. "The old Defender," Mike's voice crackles through. "Yeah, took the main engine out for that swamp buggy project I was working on, remember? But yeah, the hull's still out in the barn. Bit of a fixer-upper, if I'm honest. Why? You thinking of invading a small, particularly damp island nation? Because if so, I want in. I've got vacation days." "Close," I say, the grin widening. "I'm thinking of liberating a very, very flooded suburban street from an HOA tyrant. How fast can you get it here on a trailer? And more importantly, Mikey, my friend, does that beautiful decommissioned beast still float?" There's a pause on the line, just long enough for a particularly loud clap of thunder to rattle the garage door. Then, a bark of surprised laughter from Mike. "An HOA Karen, a flash flood, and you want the Coast Guard boat. Dave, this isn't just a story. This is the kind of legend they write folk songs about. It'll float, all right. Or at least it should. Give me an hour, maybe 90 minutes, to wrangle it onto the flatbed. This I gotta see with my own two eyes." Mike's definition of epic usually involved minor explosions or questionable livestock breeding experiments. But this time he wasn't wrong. The seed of a truly terrible, utterly brilliant, and probably highly illegal idea was sprouting, and it was beautiful. The next hour is an agonizing eternity wrapped in a downpour. The water is now halfway up our driveway, a churning brown river, where just this morning kids were riding their bikes. Little Timmy from next door, bless his innocent heart, is trying to float his rubber ducky on what used to be his mom's prize-winning rose garden. Brenda, our water-resistant overlord, is occasionally visible through the sheets of rain. patrolling her slightly drier patch of lawn like a diminutive canary yellow Napoleon, occasionally glaring at my house as if I personally willed the storm into existence. Then, a sound cuts through the roar of the rain, a low guttural rumble, the kind of sound a freight train might make if it was attempting to mate with a monster truck. Headlights, big and round, pierce the gloom. Mike's enormous, mud-splattered flatbed truck, a vehicle that looks like it eats smart cars for breakfast, is attempting to navigate our rapidly narrowing, now semi-aquatic street. And strapped to its back, under a heavy, dark green tarp, is something very, very large. Neighbors, those brave or foolish enough to still be looking out their windows, are visibly agog. Phones are out. Jaws, I can only imagine, are dropping onto waterlogged carpets across Acacia Drive. Brenda sees it. Her face, already a mask of grim satisfaction, goes through a remarkable series of transformations in the space of about 5 seconds. Confusion, then disbelief, then pure, unadulterated, vein-popping rage. She's marching towards us, or rather, waiting, her yellow slicker flaring out behind her like the cape of a very angry, very damp superhero. "David Fletcher!" Her voice is a screech that barely cuts through the storm. "What is the meaning of this monstrosity? That is not an HOA-approved vehicle. It clearly exceeds all posted length, weight, and probably sanity restrictions for this residential zone." I step out onto the porch, trying to project an air of calm I am light years away from feeling. "Relax, Brenda. Just a little aquatic assistance. Thought we'd check for stranded residents. Community service, you know?" Just as Mike, with a skill that belies the sheer absurdity of the situation, is expertly maneuvering the trailer towards my driveway, which is looking more like a dilapidated boat launch by the minute. The red and blue lights flash again. Officers Miller and Peterson are back, their patrol car parting the waters like a very reluctant Moses. Someone, Brenda, obviously, who else, has called them again. Officer Miller gets out, water immediately soaking his uniform trousers up to the knees. He pinches the bridge of his nose, a gesture of profound weariness, looking from the massive, tarp-covered shape on Mike's flatbed to the rising water, then to Brenda, who is practically vibrating with indignation. "Mr. Fletcher," Officer Miller begins, his voice heavy with impending paperwork. "I feel like I should ask if you've been drinking, but somehow I suspect this situation is well beyond the influence of mere alcohol. What, and I cannot stress this enough, what is going on now?" "Just preparing for an alternative mode of transportation, officer," I say, gesturing vaguely at the street river. "Given the current, shall we say, liquidity of the local infrastructure, seems prudent." Officer Peterson, bless his young, excitable heart, already has his phone out, his eyes wide as dinner plates. He's whispering, but I can still hear him. Is that a real Coast Guard boat under there? No freaking way." Mike, ever the helpful wingman, hops down from the cab of his truck, landing with a splash. "Decommissioned officer, perfectly legal-ish." He winks. "Got the bill of sale right here in the glove box. Just a private citizen helping out another private citizen with his large gray floaty thing. Community spirit, right? Brenda is practically incandescent with fury. He's going to destroy the street, the curbs, my prize-winning petunias, which are currently underwater because of him and his blatant disregard for HOA covenants, Section 17, subsection D, regarding appropriate vehicle tonnage. Her petunias? Lady, my entire downstairs was contemplating a future as a coral reef, and she was worried about petunias and tonnage? The disconnect was staggering, but the boat was here, and the water was still rising. The scene is set, driving rain, two increasingly bewildered cops, one incandescently furious HOA president, one very large boat on a trailer, and a street that's looking more like a tributary of the Amazon with every passing minute. It's a regular Tuesday afternoon in suburbia, really. Officer Miller fixes me with a stare that could curdle milk. Mr. Fletcher, launching that vessel in a residential street during a flood is likely to violate a dozen city ordinances, not to mention common sense, and possibly the laws of physics. Officer, with all due respect, I counter, trying to keep my voice even. This woman's actions in closing that floodgate are violating my right to not have my house condemned. She created this problem, this very wet problem. I'm just creatively solving it. Brenda, I turn to her, my voice dropping to a tone of calm, deliberate seriousness that I hope sounds more confident than I feel. You have exactly 4 minutes to get that floodgate unlocked and fully open. Brenda actually scoffs, a sound like air escaping a punctured inflatable ego. Or what, David? You'll splash me with your ridiculous oversized toy? Or, I continue, letting the implication hang heavy in the rain-soaked air, I will be forced to deploy this vessel to conduct an emergency assessment of the compromised drainage infrastructure and render aid to potentially endangered properties. It's amazing what you can find in old maritime law about the duty to assist in conditions of peril on navigable waters, Brenda. And this street, I gesture dramatically, is looking pretty navigable to me right about now. I give Mike a subtle nod. With a flourish that would do a stage magician proud, Mike yanks the cord on the heavy tarp. It slides off the boat with a wet schloop, revealing the sleek, gray, unmistakably military lines of the Defender-class boat. It's seen better days, true. Some of the paint is peeling, and there's a suspicious patch of what might be seagull poop on the bow. But stenciled on the side, faded but still legible beneath a hasty layer of what looks like house paint Mike probably hadn't quite finished stripping, are the words, U.S. Coast Guard. There's a collective gasp from the few neighbors brave enough to be watching. Officer Peterson audibly whispers, "No, way." His phone is definitely recording. Brenda's face pales. For the first time, a flicker of something other than righteous fury crosses her features. It might be fear, or it might just be the reflection of the flashing police lights in her rain-spattered glasses. "Clock's ticking, Brenda," I say, tapping my watch with an exaggerated show of impatience. 4 minutes. Sarah, from the relative safety of our porch, her voice a mixture of horror and something that sounds suspiciously like awe, calls out, "Dave, are you absolutely sure about this?" Was I sure? Not entirely. Did I know how to actually operate a 30-foot decommissioned Coast Guard Defender-class boat with any degree of competence? Vaguely, at best. I'd read the manual, once. Did I care at this precise moment with floodwater lapping at my ankles and Brenda's smug face daring me to blink? Not even a little. That 4-minute deadline pulled it straight out of my waterlogged hat. But it sounded good. It sounded very, very good. Brenda is sputtering, words failing her for possibly the first time in her HOA dictating life. This is outrageous. I'm calling the mayor. I'm calling the governor. I'm calling the actual Coast Guard on you. They'll arrest you for impersonating a boat person." "Feel free," I say, my voice calm despite the adrenaline doing a tap dance on my ribs. "They might be interested in your innovative flood management techniques. 3 minutes, 30 seconds, Brenda." I check my watch again, letting the movement hang in the air. Every second feels like an hour. Just then, a new vehicle arrives on the scene, its progress slow and wave-making. A large white van with "Acme Emergency Flood Services, we get you dry," emblazoned on the side, pulls up as far as it can. 2 guys in bright orange waders, Chad and Brad, hop out. They look like they've seen it all. their faces etched with the kind of weary cynicism only emergency service workers can truly master. Then they spot the Coast Guard boat, and their professional detachment cracks just a little. Brenda, seeing potential reinforcements, accosts them immediately, her voice regaining its shrill edge. "Finally, professionals! Officers, these men are trying to destroy HOA property. I am the president, and I demand you stop them from tampering with that gate." Chad, the taller of the two, just blinks at her, then looks at the water level, which is now high enough to make small children consider building rafts. He then eyes the very new, very shiny, very heavy-duty padlock on the ancient floodgate. "Ma'am, we got a call about a stuck floodgate? Said someone locked it shut?" "Yes, I secured it," Brenda proclaims proudly. Brad, his partner, looks at Brenda like she's just confessed to liking pineapple on pizza. "Lady, that gate needs to be open, like half an hour ago. You locked this thing during this downpour?" He shakes his head, a small, sad gesture of utter disbelief. Chad spots me and Mike by the boat, then does a double take at our unconventional maritime solution. "Whoa. Is that... Are you actually planning on launching that thing in the street? Dude, that's awesome. Impractical, probably illegal, but awesome." He gives me a conspiratorial wink. "But, look, ma'am," he says, turning back to Brenda. "We can probably get that gate open with a heavy-duty bolt cutter or a grinder if you give us the okay. Save this, fella." He jerks a thumb at me. "The trouble of, well, whatever the hell he's planning." This is it. Brenda's chance. A lifeline of professional intervention. All she has to do is say yes. "2 minutes, Brenda," I call out, my voice even. "These nice gentlemen from Acme could solve this whole mess, or I can. Your choice." Brenda draws herself up, her yellow slicker crinkling defiantly. "No one is touching that gate without a written work order, countersigned by the treasurer, and approved by a majority vote of the full HOA board at the next scheduled quarterly meeting." Chad stares at her, then slowly turns to Brad, rolling his eyes so hard I'm surprised they don't get stuck. "Right. Because catastrophic water damage always waits patiently for Robert's Rules of Order to be meticulously followed. Lady, you're on your own." He gestures to his partner. "Let's go, Brad. This ain't a flood zone, it's a crazy zone. Call us when you're serious about not wanting this whole block to wash away into the next county." They start to back away, their orange waders splashing with every step of their retreat. Even the professionals knew. You can't fix stupid, especially when stupid holds an HOA gavel and a laminated copy of the bylaws. Brenda had been offered an out, a perfectly reasonable, non-boat-related solution, and she'd spat in its eye. The die, as they say, was cast. Or in this case, the boat was about to be. "1 minute, Brenda," I yell, my voice now carrying a theatrical urgency. Mike, bless his chaotic heart, is atop the flatbed, making elaborate prepare for launch hand signals like he's signaling a fighter jet off the deck of an aircraft carrier. He even makes whooshing noises. Officer Miller is on his radio, his voice tight and increasingly incredulous. "Yes, Sergeant, I said a Coast Guard boat. No, I don't know where he got it from. He says it's decommissioned." Yes, the street is substantially aqueous at this time. Potential for unconventional maritime activity is high. He sounds like he's reading from a script for the weirdest police report ever. Brenda is screeching now. A truly impressive nails-on-a-chalkboard symphony of impotent rage. "You wouldn't dare, David Fletcher. This will be the biggest fine in HOA history. You'll be paying for this for the rest of your miserable, rule-breaking life." "Probably," I concede cheerfully. "But my basement will be dry, and my petunias might just make it. Mike, full tilt. Let's make a splash." with a tortured groan of stressed metal from the trailer winch that Mike is carefully, and gradually, not really, operating. The massive gray hull of the Defender boat begins its descent. It slides off the tilted flatbed with a surprisingly graceful and utterly enormous splash, landing in the murky waters of my driveway-turned-boat launch. The impact sends a respectable wave surging down the street, actually making Brenda stumble back with a yelp, her laminated bylaws flying from her grasp to be swallowed by the brown tide. It's floating. It's actually undeniably floating, in my driveway, and on Acacia Drive. Mike and I, with the agility of startled mountain goats, scramble aboard. He fumbles with a tangle of wires near a makeshift control panel he must have jury-rigged. Okay, auxiliary power, check, he mutters, flipping a switch that looks suspiciously like it came off a 1970s hairdryer. Bilge pump. Probably should check that later, right? Trolling motor. Engage. With a low, determined hum, the small electric motor Mike had ingeniously, and probably illegally, attached to the stern kicks in. The massive boat lurches, shudders, then begins to slowly, majestically, and with a degree of utter, earth-shattering absurdity that defies description, glide forward, off my driveway, onto the flooded street. The reactions are instantaneous and glorious. Officer Peterson is openly filming, a huge disbelieving grin plastered across his face. Officer Miller just stares, his expression one of a complete, shell-shocked resignation. He looks like he needs a very long vacation, possibly on a desert island with no boats, or HOAs. The few neighbors still watching from their windows and porches erupt in a mixture of cheers, incredulous laughter, and possibly horrified gasps. Sarah is on our porch, half covering her face with her hands, but I can see she's laughing so hard she's practically vibrating. Brenda. Brenda looks like her brain has finally, irrevocably short-circuited. Her mouth is open, but no sound is coming out. She just stands there, canary yellow and utterly defeated, as the USS Acacia makes its maiden voyage. It was a sight to behold. Me, Dave Fletcher, average suburban dad, purveyor of decent coffee and questionable weekend DIY projects, now captain of the newly commissioned USS Acacia Drive. My mission: to seek out and undo acts of extreme HOA stupidity. The trolling motor, bless its little electric heart, was barely making headway against the impromptu current created by the blocked floodgate. But damn, we were moving. We were actually moving. We're puttering down the flooded street at a majestic 1 mile per hour. Mike, having rummaged through a damp duffel bag, has found a ridiculously large D-cell mag light and is wielding it like a searchlight, sweeping its beam dramatically across the brown water and the beleaguered-looking houses. I, in a moment of inspired lunacy, grab a cheap plastic megaphone I didn't even know Mike owned. It was probably part of a kid's first police officer costume set. I flick the switch. Attention residents! This is your Provisional Waterway Authority. Please remain calm and do not approach the vessel. We are conducting urgent infrastructure repair and assessment. Repeat, do not be alarmed by the large gray boat in your front yard. Some neighbors are actually waving small American flags from their upstairs windows. Someone, I think it's Mrs. Henderson's teenage son, hoists a hastily scrawled, "Go Dave, sink the HOA" sign. The absurdity is infectious. We finally arrive at the offending floodgate. The water is gushing around it now, eroding the earth banks, but the main channel is still catastrophically blocked by Brenda's decree and her shiny new padlock. I aim the megaphone towards Officer Miller, who is watching our slow, stately progress with an expression that's an unreadable blend of despair and reluctant admiration. "Officer Miller, I have assessed the situation from my vessel. This illegally closed and unauthorized floodgate obstruction constitutes a clear and present danger to navigation on this newly established waterway and is actively imperiling multiple private and public properties. As the ranking maritime authority currently on site, I am compelled by my duty to take immediate corrective action to mitigate this hazard. I give a crisp, if slightly wobbly, salute with the megaphone. Officer Miller just shakes his head, but I can see a small smile playing on his lips. He's not stopping us. He knows, as well as I do, that this situation has sailed far beyond the calm waters of standard police procedure. Mike, ever prepared, produces a comically oversized pipe wrench, the kind cartoon plumbers use, and a crowbar that looks like it could pry open a bank vault. "Standard issue, Captain?" he asks, his eyes twinkling. "Naturally, number one," I reply, my voice full of mock seriousness. Now let's unbrenda this critical piece of infrastructure. Using the surprisingly stable platform of the USS Acacia, we set to work on Brenda's formidable padlock. It's a tough little beast, clearly chosen for its resistance to reason and bolt cutters alike. But between the leverage of the giant crowbar, Mike's surprising brute strength — he does wrestle livestock for a hobby, after all — and my sheer, unadulterated, waterlogged determination, there's a loud, satisfying snap. The padlock, defeated, plops into the murky water. We then both put our shoulders to the ancient, rusty floodgate lever. It groans in protest. It whines. It resists. But with a final, concerted heave, accompanied by a sound like a giant exhaling in relief, the gate swings open. A torrent of brown water, a churning, debris-filled wave, explodes into the now unobstructed drainage creek. The effect is immediate and dramatic. There's a huge, sucking whoosh as the pent-up water from Acacia Drive surges towards freedom. The water level on the street visibly begins to drop, the current reversing as our impromptu river starts to drain. A massive cheer erupts from every house, a spontaneous, joyous roar that drowns out even the receding storm. And just like that, the waters began to recede. Moses had nothing on me and Mike. Well, okay, maybe the parting the Red Sea thing was a bit more visually dramatic, but for the beleaguered residents of Acacia Drive? This was our miracle. A noisy, slightly rusty, and highly unconventional miracle, but a miracle nonetheless. As the water level plummets with surprising speed, the mighty USS Acacia Drive undergoes a rather ungraceful transition from majestic watercraft to awkwardly beached whale. It settles, with a series of squelching thuds, onto the muddy asphalt of the street, tilted at a jaunty, if somewhat undignified, angle. Our voyage is over. Officer Miller, his uniform now more mud than blue, approaches us. He looks remarkably less stressed than he did 10 minutes ago, almost relaxed. "Mr. Fletcher, Michael." He pauses, searching for words, a rare occurrence for a seasoned cop. Well, you got it open. The street is draining. My sincere congratulations on your successful hydroengineering endeavor." He actually almost smiles. I have about 7 different incident reports to file for this afternoon, none of which, I might add, have a checkbox for unauthorized deployment of decommissioned military watercraft to resolve HOA dispute via aggressive depadlocking. "Happy to help, officer," I say, trying to sound humble and failing spectacularly. "Just a concerned citizen, you know. Protecting property, ensuring the free flow of, suburban commerce and vital drainage." Officer Peterson is enthusiastically showing Officer Miller the video footage on his phone. His grin is a mile wide. "Sir, this is gold. Pure internet gold. It's already got like 100 views on my cousin's TikTok. He's calling it #HOA Karen Gets Shipwrecked and #Suburb Navy and #Captain Dave Rides Again. Miller winces slightly at the hashtags, but doesn't tell him to stop. Brenda is now a shrunken, silent figure, standing on what is rapidly becoming solid, if muddy, ground near her house. She's watching her watery kingdom drain away, her yellow slicker now looking less like a symbol of authority and more like a deflated canary. A few of her known HOA cronies are trying to talk to her, patting her shoulder awkwardly, but she's not responding. Humiliation, it turns out, is a powerful silencer, even for Brenda. The Acme Flood guys, Chad and Brad, having witnessed the grand finale from a safe distance, drive back up now that the street is more road than river. Chad leans out the window, grinning. "Dude, we saw the end of it from down the block. That was legendary, absolutely epic. You need a hand getting her back on the trailer, Captain? We got a heavy-duty winch on the truck." Before I can answer, Sarah runs out of the house, splashes through the remaining puddles with an abandon I haven't seen since our honeymoon, and throws her arms around me, mud, megaphone, and all. "You are certifiably 100% grade A insane," she laughs, her eyes shining. And that was the most amazing, most ridiculous, most Dave thing I have ever seen in my entire life. The basement is only slightly damp. You saved the tax returns. She kisses me, right there in the muddy street, surrounded by a beached Coast Guard boat, 2 amused cops, and a gaggle of cheering neighbors. Insane? Probably. Amazing? Definitely. Worth it? Every single drop of misplaced water, every ounce of HOA fury, every potential fine and future awkward neighborhood barbecue. Absolutely. Weeks later, life on Acacia Drive has returned to a semblance of normalcy. The grass has recovered from its impromptu bath. The water stains on the curbs are fading. The story of the great HOA Floodgate fiasco of 2025, however, is already legendary. My street, according to the neighborhood kids, is now unofficially known as Captain Dave's Cove. They sometimes give me little salutes when I'm out getting the mail. It's endearing and slightly weird. The floodgate at the end of the cul-de-sac is still there, but it's now managed by the city. It sports a shiny, new, very official-looking locking mechanism and a large sign that reads, "City property. Flood control asset. Do not tamper under any circumstances. Violators will be prosecuted. Seriously, Brenda, we mean it this time." Okay, I might have imagined that last parenthetical bit. Brenda's for sale sign went up exactly 1 week after the incident, as it's now formally known in local lore. Rumor has it she moved to a desert community in Arizona. Smart move. Less water. Fewer boats. Mike and I are having beers on my patio, enjoying a blessedly dry evening. The USS Acacia is back in his barn, probably awaiting its next improbable adventure. "So, when's the next voyage of the good ship Acacia, Admiral?" Mike asks, taking a long swig of his beer. "Hear tell the Henderson's cat is stuck up a tree again. Might need a full-scale maritime rescue operation. We could use the spotlight." "Very funny, you menace," I say, chuckling. I think her sea trials are definitively over, though the city council did send me a rather amusing letter last week. I go inside and retrieve it from its place of honor on the fridge. It's an official-looking citation, on proper city letterhead. I hand it to Mike. He reads it aloud, his voice laced with laughter. "For the unauthorized operation of a non-standard, oversized, and arguably military-grade vehicle in a temporarily established, unsanctioned municipal waterway, and for performing unlicensed, albeit effective, emergency floodgate maintenance utilizing unconventional tools and a large gray boat. A fine of $25. Payable within 30 days. Mike roars with laughter, slapping his knee. $25, that's it, for saving the whole damn street from becoming Atlantis. You got off cheap, Captain." "Yep, $25. Best money I ever spent. I framed the citation. It hangs in the garage now, right next to that old, faded Polaroid of me and Mike, and the boat that started it all. Sometimes, when the new HOA, a much more reasonable, if slightly terrified group of people, sends out a particularly nitpicky newsletter about lawn gnome height restrictions, I just go out to the garage, look at that $25 bill for services rendered to my community, and smile. Because sometimes, when reason fails and the water's rising, you just gotta rock the boat. Literally. I take a sip of my beer. The evening is calm, the street is dry, and somewhere I hope Brenda is enjoying the arid, boat-free landscape of Arizona very, very much.